the file to us as a Google Drive file
Yeah.
or as a link. Yeah. So you're familiar with that. That's no problem.
Yeah.
So the women as well, they're looking for, I think the way that we've worked with the ladies that we work with is that we want to introduce them to as many different modalities as we can, because not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And some things will really resonate with people from somewhere else. And we want to just make sure that we're giving them as much information as we can, because there's just not enough information out there for people, really, still, even now, I know.
I know, it's when you've been doing it for so long, you think everybody must know this by now, but I still hear every day, you know, I've never heard of that, or I know, it's crazy.
So it's just about, again, it's about raising awareness, isn't it, Mahesh? It's much more.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. So we're trying to get about 15 to 20 different types of women coming at it at different ways, talking about well-being and health, and talking about healing and sort of doing things naturally and supporting your body, and obviously feeling more empowered in your decisions. So that's sort of the goal. And this is sort of a free event we want to do to just build awareness. So there's no direct business or anything from Moonrise or anything that we do at all here. So we realize that a lot of people there's so much misinformation, or as our friend Trump says, there's so much fake news still. So we need to get rid of the fake news.
That's what we're doing. We want to cut through all that rubbish, and we want to present the ladies that we know and other ladies that might be out there with people who know what they're talking about.
And there's no one right answer. And my angle at it is I'm the curious outsider that happened to get thrown into the world of pelvic floors. I don't know what. Sometimes I just wonder, what am I doing? But here I.
He says this to me regularly, don't you?
I know.
What am I doing?
5 years ago, if you told me I'd be having conversations with you, lovely ladies, I'd be like, what am I smoking? So here we are. So I'm a curious outsider. And obviously we're going to have a personal story at the start of the sort of the release, where my mother had it, my wife had it, my mother-in-law had it, my grandmother has it, and it's you get it. So yeah. All right. So what I think, if it's okay for you, Kim, I'll do a quick introduction, and then let's just get chatting and let's see where the conversation takes us.
Yeah, sounds good.
Let's have fun. Yeah. All right. Shall we go? So 3, 2, 1. So welcome to another episode of the Super Healers event. And here today I have the absolute pleasure of having Kim Vopni, known as the Vagina Coach. I love the moniker, by the way, Kim. And as a leading authority on pelvic health and fitness, you've had over 15 years, maybe 20 years of experience. You've empowered thousands of women to prevent and overcome pelvic floor challenges. You've raised the bar. You've literally, were one of the first people to talk about this. And you've had 2 influential books: Prepare to Push, What Your Pelvic Floor and Abdomen Want You to Know About Pregnancy and Birth, and Your Pelvic Floor, A Practical Guide to Solving Your Most Intimate Problems, that you published a couple of years ago. So you've been doing this for many years, and you have such an interesting take on health, well-being, and of course pelvic floor. And you've had your own story. So Kim, welcome, and take us through sort of how did you get started, and a little bit about your story, and how you overcame the challenges that you had.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words, and I do get kudos on the Vagina Coach. And it wasn't a mistake. It was a kind of accidentally on purpose. It was a joke. I was making a presentation and I joked that now you have a Vagina Coach for your business. But it was a time where I was thinking I needed a bit of a rebrand, because I was shifting a bit in terms of the population that I was working with. And what started as a joke is now this brand that I work under. So thank you for liking it. But how I got there, it started, I could go back all the way to 6th grade. I saw a childbirth video and I thought, nope, not interested. But I went and spoke to my mom and said, well, you did it. And, what happened to you in your births? And she started to share her journeys. She had a episiotomy birth. So that was another kind of check mark to say, nope, not interested in doing that. And so I grew up thinking I was never going to have children. And then, of course, you get older, I got married, decided I did want to start a family. I watched my sister-in-law give birth. That was a bit of a TSN turning point for me, where I saw birth done differently than what you see portrayed in the media. And the following year, I was pregnant. I was using midwives, which is what my sister-in-law did as well. And they had recommended a product to me called the EPI-NO, which is a biofeedback device from Germany. And this was my first introduction to the word pelvic floor, and really with my goal of not tearing, because in my mind, knowing my mom's story, she had episiotomies, which is essentially cutting instead of somebody naturally tearing. I thought, well, if I don't tear or if I don't have an episiotomy, then I will not have the issues that my mom did. That was my thinking at the time. And so I used this device and I had a great experience. I didn't have tearing and I thought, great, I'm fine, I'm good. I used it again with my second birth 2.5 years later, same thing, I had a great experience. And I'd also then contact the company to say, why doesn't everybody use one of these? Because if it can do all these remarkable things, they had some research behind it with, preventing tearing. Why doesn't everybody know about it? And could I help increase awareness here in Canada? So my intention wasn't for it actually to be a business. I thought I'll just sell a few on the side. That was 2004. And then it was a little bit of a side thing for a few years. 2009, it became more, I was laid off from my full-time job. I was working in HR at the time, but I had a background in fitness. So prior to working in HR, I was a personal trainer and I was doing all the things from boot camp to OsteoFit with the seniors in the swimming pool. And I kind of covered it all. And as I was talking about this product, I was recognizing that there was fitness principles that I was applying to a group of muscles called the pelvic floor. And so that was where I started to say, well, if this is a group of muscles and we train other muscles these ways, why aren't we doing the same with the pelvic floor? So that's kind of how that started. And then, so I recertified fitness. I started my business, had an e-commerce store for a while. Then I was recognizing this void in postpartum recoveries and learning about diastasis and the link between pelvic floor. So I started a second business with 2 other women called Bellies Inc. And we wanted to bring in what other cultures around the world were doing, very much honoring this postpartum recovery. And we in North America were just, it was a sprint to the gym, who can look not pregnant as fast as possible. And we wanted to change the narrative around that. So we started that company and we manufactured our own wrap and coupled it with a pelvic floor fitness program. So kind of juggling those two. And then 2 of us were fitness professionals. One was a pelvic PT. And we saw this huge void in the fitness industry where, again, we learn about all of the other muscles in our body, but we're never learning about the pelvic floor, even though we talk about core exercise all the time. Pelvic floor is part of the core. So then we created a certification course to help educate others within their scope. So we are not internal therapists, but a lot of what we can do, we can screen for these things and help refer people on to pelvic PTs and recognize that some of the ways that they are training in fitness could potentially, I don't want to say be necessarily harming, but maybe they could be doing it more effectively and getting better results and not dealing with the symptoms that they currently have. And then throughout that journey, my partners and I, we start to go through perimenopause. We start to have our own pelvic floor challenges. I had incontinence. I've had every type of prolapse. Another partner had a hysterectomy. So like we kind of covered this basis and we said, you know what, this isn't just do your Kegels in pregnancy or wrap and do restorative exercise postpartum. It's really this lifelong journey that we have with our pelvic floor, and we deserve a whole heck of a lot more attention and information than we get. So then Bellies Inc. is now sold. And really what I do now, I would say the majority of who I support is that perimenopause, postmenopause population. So I've kind of gone through that life cycle. It's like people have followed the same timeline that I've been on. And and along the way, did a couple books. I have a podcast, but really I'm very passionate about this topic and getting information into the hands of more people that allows them to help themselves, but will allow them also to tell others, because we need to lift this veil of shame and embarrassment that has held people in this silent suffering state for a really long time.
Yeah, 100%. I remember my wife going through this, and then 12 months later, she started getting better. We were in India speaking to my mom, and my mom broke down because she was like, I've had this for like 8 years. And it was like, nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
And then when my mom started talking about it, my grandmother broke down and she was like, I've had it for 24 years. So it's like,
Yeah, it's super common.
That's when the penny dropped for me, when I realized how common it was. And so thank you for sharing. But just back to you, Kim. Sort of you were doing HR, you got laid off, you got thrown into the deep end of the pelvic floors, it sounds like. But you've also gone through your own journey, right? What's sort of been your reflections, going through your own journey and working with thousands of women today? When you look back at your journey, what are some of the key takeaways, that's brought you where you are today?
I think a big one is I went into my births with more information than at the time a lot of people had. I think there's more awareness now. More people are going in with a bit more information about pelvic health. However, I went in with a little bit of knowledge, and with the knowledge I went into, I thought, if I don't tear, I will be fine. And it sort of pointed out to me, and still points out to me, that it's not just about do some Kegels, which is, if anybody's heard anything about pelvic floor, it's usually Kegel exercises.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take away from the work that Dr. Arnold Kegel did. He was advocating for his patients who were struggling, and he devised this exercise, and I think that's great. However, I feel it's limiting in terms of its effectiveness, and we need a broader scope of information and applicability. So I think that was one piece where it was sort of, we hear this one word, or we think, if I do this, I'll be fine. And it's just like brushing our teeth. It's this lifelong practice, but again, nobody's planted the seed of that importance. So I always equate it to going to the dentist. And I remember, I think it was third grade or something, the dentist comes to the school, and we chew these pink pills, and it highlights all the plaque on your teeth. And we look in the mirror and we say, oh, gross. And so there's the motivation to brush our teeth and floss and go see the dentist once or twice a year. And if that seed was planted earlier in life about the importance of this group of muscles called the pelvic floor, and that we have professionals like pelvic floor PTs that we can see once a year for a checkup, even if you have no symptoms, I think literally the world would change. So that's one thing. I think is just that a lot of people say, oh, if I do this, I'll be fine. Or if I fix a problem with some Kegels, I'll be fine and never have to do it again. The other is I would say a big one for me was recognizing, experiencing prolapse and the limitations I felt. So incontinence, I feel, is something that it's common. We can put a pad in. It doesn't really, it's annoying. It's bothersome. People don't love it, but prolapse is what halts people in their tracks. And I felt that. I felt the fear of movement. I felt the avoidance of intimacy. I felt the shame. I'm a pelvic health professional. How did I get prolapse? I chose to have surgery for one of my types of prolapse, which is very tricky to reverse. I chose surgery for it. Again, felt like a hypocrite, felt the shame, felt the embarrassment, booked it and canceled it 2 times before I went ahead with it. So I felt from a very personal level what many of the people that I work with also feel. And I think that helps make me relatable. I think I for a long time actually was afraid to share my story, because again, when you're the expert, you're supposed to be the one that did everything right, and you're invincible, and now you're trying to preach to everybody else so they can experience the same thing. But the moment I started to share, like, hey, this was my story, and I struggled with this, and this is what I did, and that didn't work, and I tried this, then all of a sudden you become a human, and you're not just some person on the internet who has a program to sell or something like that.
It's really important. It's really important for us to, as people who work with pelvic floor and with women, is to come across as really relatable to them, but also to share those stories, because they're embarrassed and they're ashamed.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's come from a state of, I was fine. Some of my ladies are like, I had a C-section. I didn't expect anything to happen. And it's about reframing that to, right, where we are now. So what are our next steps going to be? How are we going to approach this? How are we going to create a healing process for you? And that healing process looks different for everybody, because everybody's an individual. But I have lots of women who come to me who are like, well, Abby, I've booked I've booked an operation for my rectocele because it's the thing that's really bothering me the most. And it is the hardest thing. The rectal prolapse and the rectocele are the hardest things for us to reverse and for us to action. And they're expecting me to be cross with them. And I'm like, I'm not cross. This is your body. And you're now taking action based on what you know. And that's really important to have that knowledge behind you.
Yeah, that's so huge. And that's exactly how I felt. Like, how am I going to now communicate this decision that I've made to my community? And I thought, of course, I was thinking from a business perspective. I'm also thinking just from a personal, like all these people who are in my community who follow me and trust me. And now I'm making this choice that I've kind of been directing people away from. But it was in that process where I said, this is an option that is available for people that many people choose. And it's another time where they have zero information about preparing for it, recovering from it, getting back to fitness. And so in the end, it turned out to be a really powerful time. People saw that I was
really happy when you did, Kim.
Yeah,
I was
standing
really,
up
really
and saying,
happy when you did.
Yeah, this is my story and I'm being vulnerable and this is all that I've tried. And sometimes this is the best option and this is what I'm going to do. So then it became a whole other process for people to follow along and that I could support people through, which I hadn't looked at it through that lens at the start.
And the preparation is so important. If people are choosing to go forward and have surgery, the preparation, but also post, what happens afterwards is important. And they're not given this information at the hospital. I know that they're not, because I've had clients go through it. So it's about that you recording your journey publicly has given people almost like a roadmap towards what they could, how they could prepare and what they can do afterwards, which is just wonderful. It's really good. I've pointed lots of my clients in your direction to I'm like, you need to look at what Kim's done and the way she's gone through it to prep for it, because I haven't had surgery. And so it's really nice to have a real story for people, a real person, for people to follow.
Yeah. And the really important piece that I still try to get across to people, which I know you will agree with, is even so we give all of these tools to our clients, and it's up to them really to action them. And sometimes their actions will result in the change in symptoms, improvement, elimination, wherever, take them towards a goal. And sometimes it won't. That doesn't mean that this has been a waste of time. This has all been your prehab, and everything that you have learned and everything you are doing is what will continue to be, and what is essential for it to continue to be your life. Just like we brush and floss, we don't stop brushing and flossing if the dentist says we don't have any cavities. We carry on. That's our maintenance. And so that's a big part of this whole story, is that the preparation, we have to train for surgery. We have to set ourselves up for recovery. We have to understand how to get back to fitness, and everything that we've been doing in that preparation is ultimately what's helping us be successful
rehab
part.
Afterwards. Yeah.
But Kim, I mean, today Abby hadn't asked me anything, right? And one of the questions was, a postpartum mom, 4 months in, and she has a bunch of things going on with her pelvic floor dysfunction, and it almost becomes, she meets her physio or her doctor and they recommend surgery. Given the hindsight,
surgery at 4 months, Mahesh.
Yeah,
I know.
At 4 months, and I'm at 4 months, your body is still naturally healing for up to 2 years. Your fascia and connective tissue is not even really started healing yet. You're still in trauma. Your tissues are still in trauma. And she's been recommended surgery.
So she was a little bit of she was, almost close to breaking. I mean, she was close to tears. She was like, I don't know what to do. And Kim, having gone through what you've gone through, and, talking about the preparation, talking about the fact that you canceled a couple of times, there's clearly a lot of, there's a lot of thought process behind this. What's sort of the decision-making, framework, if at all, although I know it's very unique to every person, that you would recommend, or you have used at least for yourself and see a success from customers, going through this choice and deciding, should I hop on this train or this train? And, which stops do I get on, and how does the whole journey look like? Yeah.
What I did and what I impart on others is, well, really it comes down to, here's the information. you can do with this information what you please and make the best decision for your body, whether that is to try all of these things first and see where you end up, or say, I'm just tired of it and I'm going to go forward, but please just listen to the kind of the prehab advice. That's generally how I present it. But I lived with erectocele symptomatically for 9 years. So when I was pregnant, when I used the EPI-NO device for my births, I had never heard of the term prolapse before. It wasn't until I was speaking to a doctor trying to educate them about the EPI-NO, where they questioned, it was 2 doctors actually, and they said, oh, I wonder if that would, if somebody has a cystocele, could they still use that? And in my head, I'm thinking, what the heck is a cystocele? And so, and they started carry on their conversation, and they sort of self-answered. But I then went home, and of course I Google what is a cystocele. And so the education that I didn't have means that I could have maybe had this earlier. I didn't know about pelvic floor physiotherapy until years after my second child was born. So who knows if it started earlier or it just wasn't symptomatic or not. But anyway, I lived with it for 9 years symptomatically, tried all the things, the diet, the sleep, the exercise, the hypopressives, pelvic floor PT, I didn't do any injections at that time. Pessary wasn't successful given how low the rectocele was. So kind of tried all of those things. Along the way, it was the perimenopause.
Yeah.
I say,
helpful.
Shitstorm, pardon my language, but there's a lot of craziness that happens with perimenopause. I ended up having an autoimmune thing as well. So there was all these other little layers, and it was uncomfortable at the time, but it's also highlighted that this pelvic floor story is not just about Kegels. It's not just even hypopressive. Like, there's so many other facets to this. And that means that we have so many opportunities to make change in our bodies. If we have some trust and some good guidance and some faith and, these resources and these tools, we then make the choice. Am I going to apply these or not? And if we do, we give it a period of time. If it's not helping, move on to the next and kind of knock out these things. And if after all of that, a good college try, 6 to 12 months of doing all the things that's not working for you, doesn't even have to be that long, but if the symptoms are really interfering with the quality of your life and you've really tried everything, we have a really great option here called surgery. And there's no shame in it. There's no embarrassment. It's a great option. There are risks. Let's see if we can mitigate those risks with everything that we have been doing. So my process was eliminate all of the conservative options first. If none of those are working and I've really exhausted all of the things, then I need to consider this. And the reason I canceled, one of my contributing factors was constipation. And with that perimenopause zone and an autoimmune condition contributing to the constipation, and also very, very, very heavy bleeding. And so I was very symptomatic. I booked the surgery because I was like, I've been living with this. At that point, the first time I booked surgery was probably about 6 or so, 5 years or so, that I've been dealing with it. And then I said, you know what, I can't. I have this. I know if I don't address constipation, the likelihood of this coming back afterwards is very high. So I need to get on top of that. So canceled. Then I got the constipation under control, but the heavy bleeding was still bothersome. And I said, not that heavy bleeding is going to disrupt my surgical repair, but what if I'm bleeding heavily on the day of my surgery? What if I start bleeding heavily when I'm recovering? How am I going to know if that's right? So I needed to address that piece first. So kind of like root cause investigation, get all the things in check, put yourself in the best state possible. Even if your pelvic floor is if you're still struggling with symptoms, get your inflammation down, rest, build muscle, eat properly, stay hydrated, all the things. And then you're going to go in very powerfully to your surgery. And you're also going to know what to do from a recovery perspective.
But Kim, that sounds like, you've really understood your body, and that's probably, is it fair to say it's largely because of the work you did trying to heal naturally, that you really started connecting with your body, that you understood how to listen to it, you understood the symptoms, the root cause thinking, because a lot of us go blind into a recommendation given by an authority.
Right.
But this is literally the opposite. This is literally you saying, I've walked the path and I know exactly what I'm doing now. And
Yeah.
that takes time and that takes courage,
Yeah.
which is really what you did. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, I think so. The other thing I think is I grew up, my mom was an OR nurse, very medical. We go to the doctor every year. We put our faith in what the doctor says. And I still believe that we are incredibly fortunate to have them. However, in the work that I've done, most healthcare, many healthcare systems in the world are more sick care as opposed to healthcare.
Yeah, very much
And so I started to sort of question the pill for the ill mentality, the surgery for everything, probably around the time, like fairly early after I'd given birth, and started to look more into naturopaths and learning about functional medicine. And so that was also playing a role where I said, I want my doctor for if I need pharmaceuticals, if I need surgery, but they are not the experts in the other conservative approaches, in diet, in lifestyle. They are the sick care model. And when I'm sick, I am happy that they're there. So that also played a role in sort of questioning, is the medical system, the medical sick care system, best for everybody? But so many people have this blind faith in their doctor. I'll do what my doctor says. And if my doctor has recommended this, they don't question it because we've put them on a pedestal for a long time. And I don't mean to take away from that. They're incredible. But collaborative approach is, I think, what serves people best from a true health care system.
Yeah, I mean, my doctor's amazing, and the doctors in the NHS are amazing as well, but they are general practitioners, so they have a little bit of knowledge of everything,
right?
So that they can look after you when you come to them with acute things or chronic things that are happening to you. They're not, I mean, within the medical, I think they get a day on the pelvic floor in their medical training, so it's not a huge amount of information. And I know when my doctor looked at my prolapse, she was like, you have prolapses. I can't tell you what they are. I just, it's not right. I was like, this is really helpful. I know it's not right. And she was very honest about, and she's been very supportive about, and always asks about all the weird stuff I'm doing for people now, as she calls it. And she always recommends people. She's very
awesome.
much, which is really great. It's that working together. It'd be nice if we had more of that, Kim, more of the medical side or the sick care working with the kind of the
prevention side of things, and it would be
exactly.
it'd be life changing.
I love the metaphor with brushing your teeth and the preventative model, if you may. But what's stopping the world from taking more steps there, or are we actually doing it and it's just happening? We're standing on the mountain and we don't see it. Is that what's happening, or are girls getting more aware? Are women getting more aware to work preventively or preventatively? How you say it?
Yeah.
Is it happening?
I see it happening, not quickly. I think the younger generation is much more informed. They're much more comfortable talking about everything. I don't see it shifting yet. Like, I don't think that they are getting in-school education. They are learning from social media. They're learning from mothers. There's a lot of us in the kind of this pelvic health. Somebody at one point many years ago, when Twitter came along, we had a hashtag called pelvic mafia. So this pelvic mafia is now out there preaching to many of the women who are seeking help, who are mothers. And those mothers, not all, but many, are then now telling their daughters and their sisters. And so word of mouth is shifting that conversation. And I do think that older generations, the oldest person in my community is 93. And I just absolutely, it makes my heart sing that she hasn't given up, that she just didn't accept that it's too late. She's still in there making progress on her symptoms. And I love that. But there's many people in my mom's generation, my mom's almost 80, where you don't talk about it.
They won't talk about it.
Nope. And they still just aren't comfortable with the word vagina. They're not comfortable talking about their body. Right. And so.
Yeah. My mom won't even say what I do for a living.
Yeah. Yes, I know. So my mom was very open with anatomical terms. So thankfully she has it made me cringe back in the day when you're learning about sex ed with your brother and your mom and you know, at the time, but that planted a seed. And obviously I'm very comfortable with proper anatomical terms. And I think we are doing a disservice to our children by not teaching this stuff to them. When we're teaching them about menstrual cycles, when we're teaching them about sex ed and bodies, why aren't we planting the seed about the importance of this group of muscles called the pelvic floor? So I do see it shifting. The younger population is becoming more aware, they're more informed. The older population is still a little bit uncertain, hesitant. Exactly. That's a fantastic word. And then just one more point, Abby, you were saying with the doctors not receiving a lot of training as it pertains to the pelvic floor for the general practitioners. There's also the menopause piece. So the world is exploding around the conversation of menopause. And one of the things that's highlighted is how little education doctors receive about menopause. And there's a huge part of menopause called genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which is the pelvic health component. So indirectly, the pelvic health conversation is getting some awareness and some conversation around it. And so all of this is happening. So I do think, yes, it's not changing as fast as we want, but I have seen major progress from the time, like it's been 20 years. So that's a long time that I've been doing this, but specifically in the last sort of 3-5 years, there's been tremendous shift in awareness.
Because I mean, only 7% of North Americans were brushing their teeth in the beginning of the 19th century, right? And then there was this whole.
Facts, man.
No, I love. Listen, I'm reading a lot of books about how to change habits because this is my fifth industry I'm working in, and the last couple of industries I was working in TV, and we spent a lot of time looking at how to change people's habits and how to create new sort of cultural revolutions. And I remember there's this wonderful guy called Claude Hopkins that came up with the advertising strategy for Pepsodent, and it was about running your tongue on your on your teeth and feeling a film that made everybody want to brush. So no, it's true. You can Google it.
No, I totally believe you, man.
So Kim, we need to come up with the equivalent here.
Yeah.
For obviously women feel it. It's about how, I don't know, for another day with a glass of wine, I guess. But
a lot of women aren't prepared for prolapse and for pelvic floor dysfunction when they come to perimenopause and menopause. If they haven't had any issues post-baby, they think that they're totally fine.
Yep.
They've dodged the bullet. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's almost like their nervous systems are much more distressed. They're much more distressed because they didn't expect this to happen to them. And it seems for a lot of my ladies, I don't know about yours, Kim, but a lot of the women who come to see me, it's like something that suddenly happens. It's not like something that creeps up on them. A lot of my women come to me and they're like, I was walking upstairs with the shopping bags, or I was out walking the dog and I bent down to pick up the poo, whatever, and then it suddenly fell out, and I'm like, it's not falling out. We'll have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of shock, because although we are having the conversation around menopause and perimenopause, there's still this, we've got to talk about hormones and everything, but we're still not really properly informed.
Yeah.
And that's why I like a lot of the stuff that you do as well around hormonal replacement therapy as well, because a lot of women are just terrified of hormonal replacement therapy as well. They're like, oh no, I'm going to do it completely naturally. But a lot of the times with pelvic floors, that's not what they need, or for their bodies. And I know you do lots of work with this too. So
yeah, it's a big part of the conversation, and it's
about choice again.
It's the same principles of lack of information, faced with a challenge. Then in our day and age, we go to social media. It's who's yelling loudest, and then you read somebody else is yelling, and then they're conflicting the first person that was yelling, and you kind of get yourself in a bit of it's confusing, it's conflicting, it's hard to know which way is up, and there is a lot of fear for sure. But it's the same principles as find who aligns with you, get yourself informed, do your own research, and then make the decision that's best for you, for your body.
Yeah. And
Great
it's,
point.
yeah, it's a big conversation, this one as well. In the UK just now, it's massive conversation around whether you choose, which way you choose. And the conversation I have with my clients is you don't have to choose total hormonal replacement therapy. You can just use a pessary. You know, you don't have to take a tablet. And you know, and my conversation now with a lot of my clients is about informing them that there are other options as well for them to use. That it can be localized hormone replacement therapy. It doesn't have to be like a patch or anything like that. That's not where they want to go.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm
But
curious, Kim.
I've loved your
Sorry.
chats about that. So I've loved your
Thank
stuff
you.
about
You clearly have two fans here, Kim, amongst that are speaking to you live. One clearly a little bit more than the other one, but I'm getting there. Hey, so Kim, I have a question around the role of partners. You know, obviously that's my angle. That's how it started for me. That I'm spending time with you know, in this sector, which I, by the way, absolutely love. Can you talk us through sort of one, the support you had going through the journey that you did, and choose, you know, how sort of you know, a good partner plays a role in yeah.
Yeah, I have, my husband is a partner, and I also was fortunate because I work in pelvic health. I had a lot of pelvic health. I had business partners, but I also had a big community. So I felt very fortunate to have many people who, many opinions, many people I could talk to. From my husband, Mr. Vagina Coach, I call him.
That was my title.
Sorry, it's taken.
Need to speak to the man.
Yeah, I would say initially when I was dealing with my symptoms and the awareness of what was happening, I kept it under wraps for a while because it was nothing visible. There's nothing really that he would know. I felt it. I was ashamed. I wasn't sure how I was going to broach the subject. It feels very unsexy to talk about. So I would think it was probably about maybe 2 years after. I can't remember the exact timeline, but it took me a while for me to open up to my husband. And it was around the time when I was considering surgery, because he noticed it a bit, but I was withdrawing from so many things. I didn't commit to things later in the day. Sometimes I wouldn't be exercising. So if I didn't have a successful poop, I would not move because I felt like I had a big lumpy diaper.
horrible.
But I didn't know how to vocalize that to him. So I just kind of grinned and bared it for a while. And then once I felt like I had done a lot of the things and I was down now the surgery path, I was like, okay, I kind of have to tell my husband now. And so when I told him, he said, I knew something was up. I just didn't know what. And I was just giving you the space to process it. And I'm here. And he's like, he literally is Mr. Vagina Coach. He knows about pessaries. He knows about all the different types of pelvic organ prolapse. He knows about he knows all the things.
Mine doesn't want to, but he does.
Yeah, exactly. My kids even don't. But no, he's been a tremendous support. And I feel so fortunate and grateful for him, for his support, for that. Even though I did feel ashamed at the beginning, that I eventually could open up to him, and it wasn't a big deal. It never really was a big deal. And it was never something that he, you know, said, sex feels different, or why aren't you doing this anymore? Why this? He just supported me through the whole thing regardless, and supported my choice and my decision-making. He's been a sounding board through it all. And I know not everybody has that. I know not everybody has the comfort level. They may not even have a partner. And so I feel really fortunate that I have the partner I do in my life, and he's still here and still listens to everything that I say.
Oh my God. Hold on. I hope not. No, but I'm joking.
That's why our communities are so important. That's why your community is so important as well, Kim, because it gives women that support if they don't have it, you know, or if they don't feel they can talk to someone. I have clients who won't talk to their husbands about it. They are still, they just won't. They think that it'll change the way he sees them.
Right. I hear that a lot.
Given Facebook becoming the I don't know, the uncultured town square that it's become, where do you think women should go to find support and community if they don't have that? Do you have something going on Twitter? Like, is there a free public moderated forum that women can join if they need support?
I mean, Twitter was the very first platform that I was on. That was the first social media. That's where I learned about hashtags, right? And so, but it has not really been, I haven't used Twitter in a really long time, and it's not the place where I found connection was really happening in this space anyway. It's where it started. A lot of connection. That's where the pelvic mafia, that's where I met Dr. Bruce Crawford, who I ended up working with for a couple of years. I met a ton of people through Twitter. I just didn't feel like that was a place where like kind of consumers were coming and connecting with one another and community. So Facebook groups, private groups are one place. I will say though that while they can be a tremendous resource for people, you have to really mind your nervous system, because I think some people can go deeper into a dark hole in those places than they get lifted up. So I think the intention behind them is fabulous. I just think that sometimes it's I couldn't spend time in there. It just brought me down more than actually.
So it's, yeah, I think the thing I say about social media of my clients is, if it's making you feel rubbish, when you leave, if you leave that group and you get on with your day and you're feeling rubbish, then that's maybe not the supportive network that you're looking for. And maybe you need to try either another group, or we need to start talking to your friends and get your close friends together.
And I think that there are, I mean, many of us have communities, and I think social media is great to be introduced to all sorts of people. And usually when people go down this, when they have a diagnosis, they start to deep dive into Google, and they'll find every program that's out there. And sometimes they'll buy every single program. And eventually you start to go through the weeds, and you find the person or the technique or the place where you feel like you are supported, you feel like you're making progress, you feel like this person is right for you. And we're lucky that we have so many of us that are out there that can serve all the different learning styles, all the different types of people, all the different challenges. And it takes some time, but you'll find your person and you'll find your community. So I don't typically recommend Facebook groups. They can be great for some people, but it's not usually what I would recommend as the first place. But the people who are living and breathing the work usually have some sort of a community within their practice.
Yeah, it's a good point. Where should people find your community, Kim? Where do they find you?
I spend a lot of time on Instagram from a social media perspective. I do have a YouTube channel where people can come and sort of try out my content and see if it's something that resonates with them. And then if they want, they can come and join my community. It's called the Buff Muff community. And
I've got a funny story about that.
I have funny names, and I think that obviously I'm very comfortable with the word vagina, and I that's my handle, but I also recognize that this is a heavy topic and we need to have a little bit of fun around it. So I try to lighten the load, so to speak, with some fun things. So Buff Muff is my community.
And the Buff Muff challenge is a good thing for people to get started with Kim, if they're wanting to jump in and try that, because it's a great challenge to do.
Yeah, it's my approach is very much aligned with you all, is whole body. It's not we don't sit and do Kegels 3 times 10 seconds times a day.
I had a client, honestly, the other day, she's been taught to do over 100 Kegels a day, and I just wanted to cry. And I mean, But I was explaining to my boys, I was saying, I'm going to speak to Kim tonight. She's the Buff Muff challenge lady. And they're like, Mom, what are you saying? I was like, well, muff is this and buff is this. So it means, and they're like, oh my God. They're like 13 and 11. They're like, and the boys, they're like, oh my God.
Cringy at the time, but you've planted a seed that will serve them. And, you know,
I think,
they're very comfortable with the word vulva. They just don't want to hear it.
I know. That's always a little bit uncomfortable when you're in the teens. I remember when my kids started using social media, and of course you're following them and you want to teach them how to use it, and they're like, Mom, do not like, do not follow, do not comment on any of my posts. And I respected that. I was like, okay, I'm just watching from a distance, but now it's fine. Now they appreciate it. And then I remember one time they had all the kids, I think they were, I don't know, 12 or 13 or something, my son's soccer team. And I developed a pretty big following. So then they were all like, could you like my post? Could you comment on my post? Because they think somehow they're going to get more followers. And I'm like, I don't think you want my followers to be. It's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But it is, it's
But-
starting the conversation with the boys as well, because
Yeah.
I've got boys. So, you know, and I'm hoping that that conversation that I have with them as they get older, they'll be really comfortable to have that conversation with their partners as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Kim, I just want to see, you said something that was interesting and that was quite poignant in the start, which is about embarrassment and shame. And why do you think that's the case? Is it because women, can you set words on what's the reason behind the feeling that women have that? Is it, you know, do you feel, is it because you're broken, you're not feeling whole? Like what's
Yeah, there's
actually
lots of
going on?
things.
Yeah. What can you just sort of, from your sort of you know, vantage point, what do you see
Mhm.
that's causing those emotions, and obviously what should they do to work through that?
I hear the word broken a lot. So I do think that, especially for people, so like myself, I've been doing fitness since I was 13 years old, like aerobics classes with leg warmers. You know, I grew up in the 80s. My mom worked out with Jane Fonda. I've loved fitness. I've always been fit. And so you don't think that things like this should happen to you. And when you do, you think, first of all, you're kind of like, that's not fair. And I did all the right things and I did this. And so you have a bit of a pity party for a while. But then how do you share that with other people who maybe have looked at you as an inspiration or something? So that's one piece. There's just naturally, because we whisper the word vagina, because you know, there's a discomfort around this conversation, there naturally is going to be a little, I guess we shouldn't talk about that. Okay, so then, well, I don't want to make my doctor feel uncomfortable, so I won't talk to them about it. And so we kind of go through these little mental battles with ourselves about, is it okay to talk about? Is this normal? Am I the only one? So feeling alone, and not when you know the statistics, and when you are in a community and you recognize you're not alone, it makes a significant change. But for so long, you think that that you hear about incontinence, you never hear about prolapse.
No.
And so you just think that I'm weird, I'm strange, I've done something wrong, it's my fault.
It's my
It was
fault.
when I was lifting groceries, I did it the wrong way. Like we have
Yeah.
blame associated with it. So I think there's so many layers, and it can be work related, it can be interpersonal relationship related, it can be our own self, the way we view ourself related. So many different layers in there, but it's just, I grew up, thankfully, again, my mom was very open with us, but even her generation was, you don't talk about it, you just carry on.
No,
And
you
I
don't
look
talk about
back,
anything. Yeah.
my mom going through perimenopause, now that I talk about it with her, because I was going, well, not now, it was like about 10 years ago when I was going through it, but I had no idea. When my mom tells me the stories now, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I had no idea. You just kind of put up with it, carried on, didn't talk about it, and I think I kind of wish you did talk about it, because I would have been a bit more prepared.
Yeah.
But
It's like another thing that's whispered through the corridors. You
Yeah.
know, it's like incontinence and issues after birth, episiotomies, you know,
Yes.
prolapse. It's whispered through the corridors, and then the next thing that's whispered through the corridors is perimenopause rage, perimenopause this. You know, you're not prepared for it. You know, and it's just another thing that's kind of like, oh my God, this is something else. You know.
Yeah. And it's just, and you
yeah.
feel there's a lot of blame. We feel like we have
Yes.
done something wrong, and that's why this has happened. And so I feel like that's a really big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time, but last couple of questions. I don't know, Abby, if you want to add on here, please do. Where should women start? You know, just imagine somebody who's just got a diagnosis or just found out that she has had pelvic floor issues. You know, without going to like, here are the exercises to do, because there's tons, and there's, you know, people are going to find that by Googling us and so on. What's the first step in terms of, you know, starting your journey here? Where do you recommend women typically to start?
My number one, anybody who follows me knows I say this all the time, go see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. I really, truly think that is the most underused women's health resource that we have. And it can sometimes, it's not just as easy as like, oh, there's a pelvic floor physio and I'll go see them and everything will be great. It's a very intimate therapy, and finding the right person for you, just like finding the right information and making your decision is important. Finding the right therapist and like going through the process of maybe even trying 2 or 3 is important. And once you find that person, now you start to build that trust, and you learn so much about your body. And I just feel like I wish that it was part of our our life. I wish, just like the dentist came to the school, I wish we had pelvic floor physios coming to school to say, there's no real right time, but if you have symptoms like this, or once you become sexually active, or, you know, various times in life, these all influence our pelvic floor, and we are the people that help. So that's always my number one, is to find a pelvic floor physio or physical therapist who can help you. I think then, as much as I kind of hesitate to say, social media is a place where you can go and find a lot of people talking about this. You can use hashtags of pelvic floor. You can use hashtags of hypopressives. You can find lots of people talking about this, and then just watch and see who you resonate with, and start to narrow. Like, I remember I had so many different pelvic health people that I followed along, and it becomes overwhelming, and you start to, you know, I don't quite want that anymore. And you follow and you narrow your scope. There's amazing books. A lot of people have written
There's
books.
loads. Yeah.
And that's also something that's an easy pay forward to somebody else in your life once you've read it. So I think that's a really great place. And doctors are not my first step. I think doctors are kind of way down the line. It's never what I would recommend somebody do as a first line of defense.
I must ask you this. How do you pick a good physio? Because I've sat with my wife through a lot of physio sessions, and they typically end in disaster for my wife. A lot of crying after, and it takes weeks for her to recover back, and then she's petrified to meet the next one. Because somebody says something that sort of, you know, sits badly, or somebody's given you a diagnosis that's could be wrong, you know. So there's a whole spectrum of things that happen there. What's your take on it, and how do you recommend women to go through it, braving the ups and downs?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, as I said, it's an intimate therapy. There's lots of emotion tied to this part of our body, and it's very vulnerable to even make that appointment and to start sharing this information, and to you know, part of it is consenting to an internal evaluation, and that can be traumatic for some people. It's with consent. I want to say that. It's never something that you have to do, but finding the person that you feel comfortable consenting to can be a challenge. And in terms of what I look for, it's not just, you can look at somebody's bio and it could check all the boxes. It's about that connection. It's kind of like dating in a way. I mean, you know, if there's a connection with this person or not fairly quickly. And as somebody who listens, somebody who obviously is licensed to do internal therapy, somebody, in my opinion, who has a background in some sort of orthopedics or movement or fitness coupled with their physical therapy, that they don't rely just on modalities like ultrasound or e-stim or that type of thing. They're a hands-on, whole body minded person. There's now new language that is being used of trauma informed, and there's many practitioners who are seeking out additional training in trauma informed care. So I think that's an additional level, that when we're looking for somebody, knowing that first of all, they've made the choice to attend and get that additional training, I think is really important as well. Not to say that people who don't have it are inferior, but I think those are some things that you can look for.
Excellent. Abby, any final questions or thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, that's definitely the route I send people down, is to go and see a pelvic floor specialist. The issue for me is that there are so few that, you know, that it's really, so there's always long waiting lists for the good ones. And so my recommendation then is to start with something holistic, you know, whether if they've tried hypopressives and hate it, I'm like, there are so many other things that we can try and you can look at, and then I give them resources. I lend them books. I tell them about Kim. I tell them about the other people that have been on, because somebody will resonate with them. And some program will resonate with them. Sometimes hyperpresses is too slow for people, you know, and they want a bit more action. And I totally get it. You know, it's like, it's not,
and it, like, there are some barriers, as you say. There's long wait lists. Some people don't geographically have access to one. Even if they do, sometimes the cost is prohibitive.
Huge,
if you have birthday presents, if you're postpartum, if you have a baby shower list, like, there's other ways we can try to get that stuff get support for the cost associated with that. But I do think that it really is, it's such, when you find the right person, it really is such an extraordinary level of care that that really can help people understand their body, their movement, their breath, their like all the kind of things they had no idea related to their pelvic floor, they can start to get some understanding of. So yeah.
And sometimes they find out they don't have prolapse at all. Sometimes
I know, yes.
have gone and they find out that it's not prolapse. It's absolutely, it's just not. It's been a cyst, or it's been something. It's been something that's just not what they were scared of. And that's the best news when they phone me up or they email me and they go, "Oh my God, it's not prolapse." I'm like, "Yay, go girl!" You know, so you know that in itself is a celebration.
Yeah.
But I want to say just thank you so much for all the work that you do, Kim. You were one of the first I saw as well when I was scanning the landscape, you know, for what I was going to do, because I refused to accept that I was broken.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. I felt broken, but I was like, I'm not doing this. If I can rehab a broken arm or I can rehab a broken leg, you know, then I can rehab my pelvic floor. And so it was really kind of the where I came from. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you also for putting together this amazing group of people and for helping spread awareness, because really that's how the world is going to change, is more of us talking about it and sharing and getting this information out there. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for doing the work that you do. And take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care, Kim. Bye.
So
Bye,
Kim,
Mahesh.
bye, Abby.
Bye.
Bye, Abby. Bye. So Kim, you have the recording. Just send it to us when you can. And thank you. By the way, what are you most excited about going forward with, from a business point of view and obviously pelvic health? What are you excited about?
What am I excited about? I'm excited actually about the retreats that I've been doing. I like you and many of the people you are working with, we're online all the time, and connecting with people in person is such a rich experience. So I really love the opportunity to spend time with people in a environment where they're paying attention to themselves. We're connecting as humans and a community and all around kind of the same topic. So yeah.
Brilliant.
That's kind of what's exciting me.
We're moving our entire family to Bali, and one of the things.
You're moving there?
Yeah.
I used to live in Jakarta when I was in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we used to go to Bali all the time.
Oh, yeah? What are your memories from there?
Beautiful memory. And I was actually just there about a year and a half ago. I went back, but very cool. Yeah, it's
to Jakarta or to Bali or to both? To
Bali, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And I have a couple of good friends that still live there, and so Bali's a very spiritual, magical place. I would say it's been tainted a little from people from other parts of the world who are going there, you know, kind of like a yoga mecca, I would say. But it's the people. Honestly, the people there are just the most beautiful people. I love it.
Yeah. I was there 10 years ago, and I was doing meditation retreat for about 3 months. And I loved it. And this time we thought, you know, why don't we see if we can do a retreat there, do some more offline things, and you know, get inspiration for people. So I totally agree. I love working online because of the accessibility and the reach, but it's a little impersonal.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, I have to run. I have another meeting, but I will send you the recording once it's finished uploading. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Kim. Take care.
Yeah, we'll see you again. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.